Today in the News Digest, a war in Ukraine enters a new high-tech phase, as stated by Ukrainian Armed Forces Commander-in-Chief Alexander Syrskyi. Zelenskyy arrives in Paris to secure a major defense loan of 90 billion USD. EU sees such a loan as a chance to reinforce its own defense. Sweden has arrested yet another Russia's Shadow Fleet's tanker. Learn the details in our episode and watch our story, how the world fights Russia's Shadow in general, and Shadow Fleet in particular. Ukrainian drones in action. Unmanned aerial vehicles attacked the Uralchym chemical plant in the Russian region of Kirov. The strikes resulted in damage to the facility's production sites. Preliminary reports indicate that 2 drones hit the plant's ammonia workshop, while another UAV struck the polymer products workshop. Uralchym is a major Russian chemical company and one of the leading producers of chemical products in Russia and the broader Eurasian region. Also, unidentified drones attacked Khanskaya airfield in the Republic of Adygea. The airfield is owned by the Russian Ministry of Defense and serves as a military aviation training facility. The war in Ukraine is entering a new technological phase. Ukrainian Army Commander-in-Chief Alexander Syrskyi announces technological breakthrough on the battlefield. According to him, in February, Ukrainian drones struck over 105,000 enemy targets. Syrskyi says the key factor for victory is the acceleration of both unmanned systems production and deployment rates. The war has entered a phase where the expansion of kill zones, zones where the enemy can't survive because of massive drone presence, is a direct consequence of the growing capabilities of strike UAVs. As a result, Russia is losing the initiative, especially in the southern parts of the front line.
The war has entered a new stage. The expansion of the kill zones is a consequence of the growth of the capabilities of strike UAVs. To win this war of technologies, Ukraine needs to increase the pace of development of effective unmanned systems, their procurement for the army and use on the battlefield. Alexander Syrskyi, Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, on Telegram.
Moreover, as per Deputy Commander of Ukraine's Air Force, Pavlo Yelizarov, up to 50% of Russian drones are currently destroyed near the country's border or along the front line. And that is not even considering the fact Ukraine is developing its own Iron Dome. It will differ from the Israeli system, no doubt. Ukrainian territory is 27 times bigger than Israel's. But once finished, the system is expected to significantly improve Ukraine's ability to counter aerial threats and become a key component of the country's layered air defense.
At the moment, we have a clear understanding of all 4 components that will be working as one to raise Ukrainian air defensive dome. Our dome will be different from Israel's because it has to be much larger. In terms of scale, Israel's dome would be just a small spot on ours. Therefore, to fill the spot in with expensive missiles is possible, but to fill Ukrainian dome with missiles like Patriot or Iris is impossible.
Ukraine and Romania will jointly manufacture drones, with production facilities to be established on Romanian territory. The agreement was signed during Volodymyr Zelensky's visit to Bucharest. Additionally, the 2 nations concluded a declaration on strategic partnership. Volodymyr Zelensky expressed his gratitude to Romania for its principled stance and unwavering support of Kyiv, noting that Ukraine is currently enduring the worst form of Russian combined terror: missiles in the sky, targeting civilian objects, and constant assaults on the front lines. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky arrived in Paris today on March 13, 2026, for meetings with President Emmanuel Macron to discuss crucial security and financial support. On the backdrop of the European Union attempts to finalize a €90 billion aid package for Ukraine for 2026-2027, President of Ukraine Volodymyr Zelensky arrives in Paris. This visit, marking Zelensky's 11th to France since the full-scale invasion in 2022, comes amidst ongoing efforts to secure long-term European financing for Ukraine's defense. Despite potential vetoes from pro-Russian voters like Orban or Fitko, officials, including Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, have asserted that the funding will be delivered to ensure Ukraine's financial and military resilience, with initiatives aimed at launching the first tranches as early as in April 2026.
For us, support is important in the issue of a package of €90 billion for Ukraine for 2 years. This is a financial security guarantee for us. And now, before the meeting of European leaders in Brussels next week, We are coordinating our positions to reach an agreement to release the funds.
Nothing will distract our attention from Ukraine. The current dynamics has already testified to a triple defeat for Moscow. A strategic, economic, and moral defeat. Perhaps Russia thinks that the war in Iran will give it a rest, but it is mistaken.
It looks like Europe this time is devoted to arm Ukraine properly, as it is starting to understand. Using Ukraine as a shield is a way better option than fighting on your own, especially when you are not too ready. Naftogaz, Ukrainian state oil company, has finally and irrevocably won a $1.4 billion lawsuit against Russia's oil giant Gazprom. In July 2025, it was Gazprom who initiated proceedings to set aside the arbitration award and simultaneously applied for a stay of its enforcement pending the outcome of the lawsuit. In November 2025, the Swiss Federal Supreme Court rejected the application for a stay of enforcement. Now, as confirmed by Syrskyi, chairman of the board of Naftogaz of Ukraine, a last Russian straw has broken. In addition to $1.4 billion, the Swiss court ordered the Russian company to pay legal costs totaling 450,000 Swiss francs to compensate Ukrainian Naftogaz in costs related to the proceedings. A cherry on the top of oil news for today. Another oil giant. This time, however, Saudi Arabian Aramco is in talks with at least 2 Ukrainian companies to buy interceptor drones that could help protect against Iranian attacks targeting Saudi oil fields, according to sources familiar with the matter. The Berry oil field, for example, was targeted Saturday by a drone, likely from Iran. Saudi officials familiar with the matter said. Not only Saudi Arabia, but also other regional Gulf oil producers have had their energy facilities and oil fields targeted by Iranian strikes in recent days. Aramco is racing to secure drones ahead of its own government and regional competitors, including Qatar. The company is talking to Ukrainian companies, Skyfall and Wild Hornets. Saudi officials have also talked to Phantom Defense, a Ukrainian company that produces electronic warfare systems designed to disable drones' communications. Sweden intercepts, second during the week, tanker in its waters, which is suspected to be Russian Shadow Fleet ship. Ministry of Civil Defense confirms that the vessel is called Sea Owl 1, and it is not being registered to any state at all, while it is listed under EU sanctions and transports Russian soil. The UK and its allies are tightening military action against Russia's Shadow Fleet. This was announced after a meeting between UK Defense Secretary John Healey and his counterparts from the Baltic and Northern European countries. What methods for Shadow Fleet will be used and how this will impact on Russia's oil revenues in the next story for you.
Restraining, disrupting, and weakening Russia's Shadow Fleet deprives Putin's war machine of its means of existence. It also exerts pressure on Russia to end its war against Ukraine. This is stated in a declaration on the British government website following a meeting between UK Defense Secretary John Healey and his counterparts from the Joint Expeditionary Force. The group includes 9 other countries: Denmark, Estonia, Finland, Iceland, Latvia, Lithuania, the Netherlands, Norway, and Sweden. The United Kingdom and its allies will continue to strengthen military and law enforcement cooperation in the fight against shadow shipping, emphasized the head of the British Defense Ministry.
As we enter the 5th year of Putin's illegal war in Ukraine, we're stepping up the pressure on Putin by choking off the funds that fuel his invasion and targeting Shadow Fleet vessels. I'm proud of the UK's leading role in the Joint Expeditionary Force as we step up together to tackle the threats we face in this new era for defense. John Healey, Secretary of State for Defense of the United Kingdom, on the British government website.
Under British sanctions are already 544 vessels of Russia's Shadow Fleet, and this pressure is bearing fruit. The UK Defense Secretary is convinced. In particular, Russia's critically important oil revenues fell by 27% compared to October 2024, the lowest level since the beginning of the war against Ukraine. And this demonstrates the real impact of coordinated international actions on the Kremlin's ability to finance its aggression, noted the British ministry. Meanwhile, Ukraine's Foreign Intelligence Service has obtained data on the Kremlin's plans to increase the number of tankers transporting oil under the Russian Federation's flag. This decision is dictated by the increasingly frequent cases of Shadow Fleet vessels being detained by European states and the United States, noted the Ukrainian agency.
The Federal Autonomous Institution, Russian Maritime Register of Shipping, which is under EU sanctions, plans to conduct identification and inspection of about 80 tankers with the aim of re-registering them in the near future. Increasing the shadow fleet under the Russian flag automatically makes it easier for Russia to embed Russian special services agents on board for further reconnaissance and sabotage activities against Western countries, from a statement on the website of Ukraine's Foreign Intelligence Service.
The situation in the Middle East, caused by the U.S.-Israeli operation against Iran and its consequences for the oil market, does not justify lifting sanctions against Russia. This conclusion was reached by the leaders of the Group of 7 countries, stated French President Emmanuel Macron following a video conference.
We also agreed at this G7 that this situation in no way justifies lifting the existing sanctions against Russia, which must remain in place. This situation should not, of course, diminish our focus on Ukraine, our support for Ukraine, or the clarity we have regarding sanctions against Russia.
Europe would make a strategic mistake if it tried to mitigate the rapid rise in energy prices by returning to Russian fuel, stated European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen on March 11th during her speech in the European Parliament.
Fact is, we have energy sources that are homegrown, renewables and nuclear. Their prices have remained the same over the last 10 days. Yet in current crisis, some argue that we should abandon our long-term strategy and even go back to Russian fossil fuels. This would be a strategic blunder. It would make us more dependent, more vulnerable and weaker.
Due to Western sanctions, Russia's revenues from oil sales have collapsed to a record low since the beginning of the full-scale invasion of Ukraine, reports Bloomberg. We are talking about losses of $1.5 billion in February alone. Overall oil exports fell by 850,000 barrels per day. In addition, strikes by Ukraine's defense forces on Russian oil infrastructure and fuel plants reduced oil refining volumes by approximately 300,000 barrels per day, notes the agency. Reported by Kristina Dombrovska, UATV News.
That's all for today's News Digest. Tell us in the comments which story matters most to you. Your feedback helps shape our coverage. Subscribe to our channel and stay tuned for more updates from Ukraine and around the world.